Well, tell me, mama, what's going on? Tell me, darling, what's going on?
Welcome back, everybody. Bacon and Egg Show, November 28th, 2020. This is show number 31, which is interesting given the subject matter of today's show because Tom Herman has only won 30 games at the University of Texas. And so, hey, we're 1-0 over that. So it's, interesting how the numbers play out, But
any way you can go 1-0 is a good way to go 1-0. Just try to go 1-0 today, this week, this year, maybe even. But I have a feeling that the way that our conversation is going to go today will reflect that Tom Herman has not gone 1-0 as head coach of the University of Texas football team, and we got a lot to talk about today, man. That was I would say, program crushing loss yesterday. So let's dive in, man. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, well, Jay, did you have a good Thanksgiving? Have a good holiday?
Yeah, if we want to talk about, if we want to have some positives real quick before we.
Yeah, I think so. Let's start on a good note here before we fire up the flamethrower and start torching everything on the 40 acres down in regards to the football program. So
yeah, I had a good Thanksgiving. I did. We had a good Thanksgiving, just stayed at the house and it was good. We've had a few days off here in a row. So to be able to spend it with the family has been nice. How about y'all? How was y'all's day?
Yeah, it was good. Pretty mild in terms of activities and not mild on the food consumption though. I had a nice slice of some homemade pecan pie this morning with coffee, and so I'm ready to go. I'm feeling good this morning. We got a lot to talk about.
Yeah,
but yeah, Thanksgiving was good. It's I had to work on Friday, which was kind of a bummer. Which actually, given the game that we were about to talk about, there was a little bit of overlap with what attention I was able to pay in the fourth quarter. But so it might have actually been a little bit of a blessing in disguise that I had to work on Friday. But yeah, let's get into this. Texas lost yesterday against Iowa State, a good Iowa State team. Let's not be mistaken there. Credit to Iowa State for coming into Austin and getting the win. As of yesterday, they were ranked 13th in the country. I think when the polls come out tomorrow, depending on how some games around the country play out, they could be on the verge of the top 10. So this is a good Iowa State team. Let's not be confused about that.
Right.
But this is also a Texas team that was on a 3-game winning streak. The game was at home. As we've talked about this entire season, a team chock full of talent, senior quarterback, all the expectations in the world. And for 3.5 quarters, give or take a little bit, this was a team that looked like that they really they might have had things under control against Iowa State. Is that an accurate assessment to you, Jay?
Yeah, I would say that it looked like they were doing what needed to be done to win that football game. Yeah, I mean they look like a team where, okay, this is the statement win. This is the win that's going to show this program is headed in the right direction. And I felt that. I felt that it could happen through, like you said, 3.5 quarters, and then you just sort of, this little thing happens here, and then one play happens here, and you don't pick up a fourth down, and it's very obvious to me that the way we've been feeling about Tom Herman all season long is spot on, because we saw it play out in front of our eyes yesterday in one football game, where you have you start the first possession you get, touchdown on offense. And it's like, man, all right, let's go. Let's keep it rolling. And then it's a heavy dose of Bijan Robinson, which is what we've been asking for. I mean, it was heavy Bijan Robinson. And we were sitting there and it's like, man, is this really going to happen? Like, are they really going to feed him the ball like this? And then, come out next possession, look good on offense again, looking good, making the nice downfield pass to Eagles where he played a really nice role there. And it's amazing.
He had a really good day.
He had
Eagles
a great
had a really
day.
good day.
Probably his best day on campus. And just in terms of impact per catch. But the thing is, Kerry, my point is Tom Herman builds you up at the beginning, to make you feel like something's achievable. And then right towards the end, as you are feeling your highest and like this is going to happen, you are feeling the best about this program in one game instance, and then he lets you down. That it sums up his entire tenure here, where he built it up. He's got a big bowl game win over Georgia. He's got us now, Kerry. He's got us thinking we're heading in the right direction. And then what happens? He lets us down. The program he finds a way to not win ball games. And then, okay, we look, we weren't too high on him coming back into this year. Looked shaky at the beginning of the year. And it's like, but then he shows us that he has the capability to run off, a big win streak and get some good wins under his belt, just enough to build us up to yesterday, to let us down again, Kerry. And that's just I'm glad you mentioned that. On the same page here.
I'm glad you mentioned that about this win streak, because I think this is something that I think we've kind of hit on a little bit throughout the course of this 3-game streak that they've had, which is, it feels like an eternity, because this is a team, which is another thing we'll get to here, that had about 19, 20 days to prepare. This is a fresh, rested team that was ready to go, which I think goes to your point about how they look so good for those first couple drives of the first half, and then also coming out of halftime.
Yep, after halftime too.
This is a rested team. They had plenty of time to prepare, but about the win streak thing, with the exception of the Baylor game, which even that one, given how Baylor's looked throughout, now that we've seen more of Baylor and know more about who they are, was still a little too close for, I think, for what this team should have done. Like they should have destroyed that Baylor team, but they let them hang around a little bit. I know they kind of pulled away late, but this game against Iowa State looked exactly like, not exactly, but I mean, the West Virginia game, they left points on the field. We talked about that, about how if West Virginia made a couple different decisions in that game, they probably win.
Yep.
We talked about the Oklahoma State game, about how, as bizarre as that was, if Oklahoma State doesn't turn the ball over 4 times and allow a kick return for a touchdown, they win. You could actually say that if you leave the turnovers in, if Jameson doesn't take that kickoff back for a touchdown, Oklahoma State wins that game. And I think this in Iowa State this game was kind of trending that way, of this kind of like, okay, well, Iowa State started getting some drives together. They get into the red zone and the Texas defense bowed up and they held them to 3 points here. They had a missed field goal at the end of the first half. This kind of started looking like that kind of game where you go, Texas might get out of this with a win. Iowa State's going to reflect on it and go, oh, we had our chances. We could have very easily won this game. Instead, Texas basically let them drive right down the field, 2 minutes to go in the game, and they did win it, because Iowa State's a good football team. And I mentioned that because we've talked this entire season and going back to the preseason about the eye test. And we talk about win streaks and how, after losing those games against TCU and OU, they got their bye week and a lot of great weeks of practice in, and they put together this win streak. I never felt like that win streak was as convincing as you would think from like a 3-game win streak kind of thing. Like, I don't know, hindsight and all those kinds of things, but it never felt that convincing. Like, it never built up that much confidence in me to say like, oh yeah, this is a team and a coach that's turned the corner here.
No, but the thing is at the time we were just, and I personally was just looking for Tom Herman to find a way to win games.
Sure,
And
right.
and that's what he was doing. They were finding a way to win games. And when you look back on it now, it's like these players, it was these great, and it almost takes a great individual effort by players to overcome coaching and scheming and things like that in order for him to find a way to win these games. And that looking back on it now, you mentioned the kickoff return, that the forced turnovers and things like that. Like those are usually like turnovers and kick returns are usually the product of a great individual effort, not necessarily. And obviously,
Talent.
yeah, talent, exactly, talent. So when you look at that and how he was finding a way to win football games, and it just seems to me that it was some great talent that was winning football games and not necessarily the coaching. And when you have as much talent as on this campus, it's going to find a way to win games no matter what. And they're winning. There's more talent on campus now than there was when Charlie Strong was here. So they're finding a way to win more games despite, not because of, but in spite of their head coaching. And that to me really tells the story of what Tom Herman's legacy will be.
Well, and I want to hit on something that you said, because I think it's really revealing to this about the state of this program. And that is we were just looking for a way for this team to win and to win games. Given the talent, given the expectations, given everything, a blue blood program, all those kinds of things, to be at the point where it's like we're just looking for them to find ways to win a game. To me, that says everything about the state of this program and the state of Tom Herman's job. You don't hear Lincoln Riley in that OU program saying like, we're just trying to find ways to win a game. Just get a win. If they don't play to the expectation and you don't hear that from these other programs that are actually in national title and playoff contention. Like Clemson goes and screws around and barely beats a winless team by 3 points. It's not like, hey, we just found a way. We're just got to find a way to win. It's like there's a problem.
Right.
And I think, and I agree with it. I mean, that's kind of where this thing is. It's like, God, if they can just, get a win here, get a win there, they're still in the Big 12 race. I think that says so much about a team and a program that going into this season, people were thinking like, this is a team that can make a playoff. This is a team that the Big 12 is set up for them to win this year. And this is a team that can go to the playoff. And it's all of those goals are now out the window officially. This loss yesterday was an elimination game. So Jay, let's kind of break down some of the game here a little bit, though. I know we talked about kind of what the Texas offense did coming out of the gate in the first half. They put together a good drive in the second half. A lot of the discussion points yesterday and today and kind of have revolved around some play calling in some certain situations. We had, a fake punt late in the game. We had the fourth down that you mentioned with that Sam wasn't able to get. What changed between those opening drives where Bijan Robinson's getting carries? They're looking like the offense we wanted them to look like. We see Jordan Whittington get some catches.
Yeah.
Jared Wiley had his first career touchdown catch. Like we're starting to and here we are, with a couple games left in the season, and that guy finally has a touchdown catch.
And it was his only catch.
Yeah.
We've talked about getting these tight ends and these bigger wide receivers more involved. We've talked about this. I don't understand. That's another thing. It's just speaking to and since we're talking about play calling, the lack of plays that are dialed up for these guys specifically, and it goes back to, the defense dictates where we go with the ball. And it's like, you have so much talent at your disposal. Get these guys the ball. So Yeah, man. I mean, the fake punt thing. I was talking with Randy Rodeo yesterday about this. I didn't mind the call. Like I don't mind, even though they might be sort of thinking it could come because of the way you were where you are in the field position. Excuse me. I don't mind it because if you execute it there, you get the first down. The but I think Kerry, you had a point that you were going to make about a Tom Herman quote around that specific play.
Yeah. Yeah. We can get into that if you want. I think, I do agree with you. I think the call at the time, I don't disagree with that. I think there is a time to to take that kind of shot and take that chance. They didn't, it wasn't executed. They didn't get it, but I don't fault them for taking the chance there. I guess I take a little bit more of an issue with going for it later in the game when Texas has a chance to make it a 7-point game. And you can say, well, this is a chance to kind of nail the coffin shut, finish the game here if you can convert the fourth down. Yeah, but the defense has played pretty well that day. You kick the field goal, you're up 7, and then you have to force Iowa State to drive down and get a touchdown. I mean, they ended up doing it anyway. But like, at least at that point, if they do score the touchdown, it's a tie game, and maybe they try to go for 2 to get the win or something. But it's more probable, I think, that you win the game if you just kick the field goal there and force them into that situation. But regardless, I don't have an issue with the fake punt call, really. I do have an issue with what Tom Herman said after the game about it when asked about that call. And his quote was, "The thinking on the fake punt was that we'd worked it for 2 weeks and knew it was there. They did a good job defending Cade. I think if you watch the replay, you'll see Roschon Johnson wide open on the corner route, and we didn't see it." So let's break this down a little bit here. Ryan Buchevsky, the starting punter, has been out. He's injured. He's done for the season. Cameron Dicker's taken over punting duties. So you have a backup punter being asked in this situation to convert this trick play. And Tom Herman is he's completely throwing him under the bus for saying, if you watch the replay, you'll see Roschon Johnson wide open on the corner route, and we didn't see him. He's pissed off that his backup punter didn't check through his progressions on a fake punt. This is crazy, right? Like,
but that's who he is. That's who the guy is, man. Like, that is exactly who he is as a coach. There's no accountability. It's not his fault that play. I called the right play, man. They didn't.
The binder said, and then when it's not the right play, he blames it on the binder. Well, that's what the binder said.
You could see he was open, man. I mean, it's not my fault. And it's like, dude, it is everything falls back on you. Being in that position to have to run a fake punt at that point in the game. It's just, I don't understand. And again, at the time, I was okay with the call, but to say, "Oh, we should have gotten that because I called the right play there."
He shouldn't have checked down to throw to Cade Brewer there. That was just the wrong progressions. He didn't read it right. Like, dude, you're talking about a backup punter.
At the time, that's a great individual effort, and that guy that made that play was good all day long. I forget his name, but that guy was making plays all day long. He made a great individual effort and a one-on-one tackle on a big receiver, and he took him down. And you got to tip your hat to the guy for making a play there, and he did his job. And then, but to look at it and say we should have made the play, like we just missed him, and it's like it just, to me, I'm sorry, man. It just sums it up for me who he is and why he's not the dude.
Yeah. And this, I mean, we've talked about this before about his, Michael Dixon was on campus. He never called Michael Dixon by his name. He's probably one of the greatest special teams players in school history. If
easily, yeah.
And on pace for being one of the great punters in NFL, like just what he's done in his few years in the league. And he always, the punter. Well, why don't you call him by his name, Coach Herman? Well, he's the punter. Why would I call him He's the punter.
And he thinks it's cute.
Yeah, he thinks it's like, I don't know, like it's some kind of like cheeky like thing, like, oh, like what a football guy. Look at this guy. He's not going to call the punter the punter.
He's just a kicker. He's just a punter. And it's like, you know what, Tom, that kicker, if Sam wouldn't have taken one of the worst sacks of his career in terms of timing there, that kicker might have saved your ass.
He nearly did.
He from 57 yards, it was good. It was good from 61, 62, and it just barely bent outside that upright. The kicker almost saved his ass, almost could have saved his job, and instead, he just misses. And it's just, to me, I don't. He's so immature for somebody that lets everybody know how smart he is. He's so immature. It's just, I don't get it, to be the coach at the University of Texas and to still have this sort of frat boy mindset, this playing it cute and playing to the football crowd. And nothing against frat guys, if you're listening, but you know what I'm saying, man. Like, it's time to grow up, Tom.
Yeah.
Like, it's time to grow up, and you're done growing here in Austin. It's not happening anymore.
Yeah, I think for me, when I hear those kinds of quotes and all, and I'm actually kind of surprised this quote didn't get a little bit more attention. As soon as I saw it, I was like, God, here we go again. But I wonder if people are just so kind of over it that it just didn't get the run. But like,
yeah.
Charlie Strong got a lot of heat, and rightfully so, for his team's performances when he was at Texas. They did not perform. And his tenure and all of that reflected that. I don't really remember Charlie Strong like kind of throwing guys under the bus the way that Tom Herman has over these 4 seasons. And you certainly know, and to a fault, that Mac Brown would have never throw players under the bus the way that Tom Herman has during his time. We can all think back to the infamous OU press conference where Chris Sims was asked the question and Mac stepped in and I'll answer that, and covers for Chris Sims, and everybody's like, God, what a coddling coach and all those kinds of things. Yeah, but he's protecting his players. And I think we talked about this kind of locker room dynamic with this program under Tom Herman, because I still don't know. And most of this team, I think I saw something. There's only 3 players on this roster that I think Tom Herman did not recruit. And I don't know, but so these are all his guys. And I still don't know if we know how much these guys actually really like playing for him or not. And I think the recruiting, which we'll get to that in a little bit, but like recruiting reflects that about players that want to play for him. What are they hearing from current players? What are they, those kinds of things. It's over. I think we agree. I think we've had Mike on here. We've had discussions with him. I think we all agree that it's over. I guess the big question becomes, does Chris Del Conte and the brass at UT agree?
How do you not? And at the beginning of this season, with everything that they've had to deal with, and it's not a, it's just, nothing is, the deal is you get these coordinators in here and you think, okay, this is going to help me change as a head coach. And that was the whole deal, right? He's going to become more of a CEO. He's going to not, have his fingers all in every pot, because you're bringing in all these new coaches and they're going to be able to handle it. And it's nothing, not one, you don't have any feeling at all that Tom Herman has grown as a head football coach, or
no.
Since he's in this past year. And then when you watch a team go out there and just, at times, because of their talent, look like a really, really good football team. They show these flashes of brilliance where you're like, that, I would want to see that. You would expect to see that sort of a play from a high quality football player at a high quality football program. And then you just see where every single player, none of these players can make a play at certain times, and they're not being put into positions to be successful. Yesterday, Iowa State made adjustments.
Matt Campbell's a good coach.
Matt Campbell's a great coach. He's been somebody for the last couple of years that we've been talking about as, you don't want to play against a Matt Campbell coach team.
No.
He's just that good of a coach. And he's the type of a coach where it's almost like, and we're going to discuss, since we both feel like Tom Herman should be out. Well, I know we'll discuss some possible hires later, but he's the type of guy where you look, and that's the kind of guy you want coming in and running a football program. I'm not saying maybe he's not ready to be the head coach at Texas, but you see the kind of coach that he is. He knows the kind of coach that he is. His players know what kind of coach he is. So on the recruiting thing, Kerry, it's the same thing. Is you don't know what kind of football team you're going to get, but you know what kind of head coach you're going to get. It's a guy who thinks he's above changing and evolving. And I agree. I think people are starting the word's out on Tom Herman in terms of the type of cat that he is. And is he a real dude, or is this just it's the facade of the head football coach of the University of Texas? Because the players that want to be at the University of Texas are still coming to the University of Texas, but you're seeing all of these guys that out of this backyard, Del Valle and Austin, and these Pflugerville, these guys that are leaving this area to go to big name schools because Tom Herman doesn't give a shit enough to keep them give them around. And they maybe they're close enough to the program to know enough about Tom Herman to know they don't want to play for that cat. Maybe that's it too. But either way, the word's out, man, and it's showing. It's really showing.
Yeah, and we're gonna get more into that, and more in kind of like more into if Tom Herman, and just some things that I've seen and I'm hearing all that about what his future may or may not be at Texas. But we've got 2 games left in this season, unfortunately, and it's 2 trips to Kansas in December.
God.
This is a team that now doesn't have anything to play for. There's no coaching staff dangling a Big 12 championship over their heads to motivate them. There's none of that. It's done. Sam now knows that his career at Texas, he's not going to have another home game. He lost his senior day. And these I
feel for that guy.
Yeah, it's too bad. But I think we're going to learn a lot about. I think these next 2 games are going to answer our question about how these guys feel about Tom Herman, because that's all there is to play for now. That's it. And these players hear everything. They're active online, They're on the internet.
Yeah.
They check Facebook.
Yeah.
Yahoo.
Yeah.
And all those, fancy sites that the kids use these days. They're they hear about Urban Meyer. They're very aware of all these things. How many I wonder how many classmates or people that are like, so what is Urban Meyer going to be the coach? How much do you think that these players continue hearing about it? And if you're an underclassman on this team that's getting some playing time, how much of in your mind is like, man, this is a done deal. These next couple weeks, I don't really care all that much because shit, we're going to have Urban Meyer here next season. This Herman guy's a dick. I don't care. Yeah, I know these guys they're not professionals. Okay. Let's make sure they're amateur athletes,
right.
student
Student
athlete. Yeah.
athletes.
So they're doing it for the love of the game, and I'm sure they're going to go out there and play hard and give it their all. And, you know, but I think we're going to learn a lot about how they feel about Tom Herman. I mean, we said kind of the same thing when Charlie Strong lost to Kansas, that TCU game that was coming. It was like, well, let's see what they do. And they went out and just laid a complete egg. And it's like the players are like, well, we care so much. We care so much. But then you kind of look at how they play and like,
Do you?
or do you want to win? And at the time, it was like, Charlie's got to go. LSU's trying to get Tom Herman. And if Texas can get this guy in here, things, this seems like it'd be a home run hire. Of course, it hadn't played out that way. But how many of those players are kind of feeling that the way that group did about what Urban Meyer potentially and all those things can bring to the table? And I Manhattan, Kansas is already a tough place for Texas to go play, even if they were still in Big 12 championship contention. I mean, I don't know. Kansas State's they're struggling right now, so this might be one of those out talent them kind of games. But I mean, I think we know Kansas will be that way. I think they're going to get a win in Kansas regardless.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to have any trouble winning these games, and I think some of these guys are going to want to put on an audition for whoever that next coach will be. I think they're going to play well for a couple of games,
or for the portal.
Either way, yeah, whoever the next coach is, the next coach will be, whether it's here or somewhere else. Yeah, you're exactly right. These guys are going to want to ball out, and it's just they know they have the opportunity to go in there and put up some good games and put some good games on film for whoever's coming in or for scouts or whatever it is. So I don't think we're going to see these guys lay down over these last couple of games. You mentioned something about players actually caring about Charlie, and I think they did care about Charlie. I just think that there wasn't enough talent on this campus for them to put anything together of note. I don't know. These guys aren't going to be sad when Tom Herman gets fired.
No.
I don't think there will be any sort of, because there was that sentiment around the program. Like, there were some guys that Charlie was their dude. They cared about him. They truly did care about Charlie Strong, but they knew, like you said, they knew he probably wasn't the right guy to win football games at Texas. But I think they genuinely cared about him. I don't feel like we're going to get that same sort of vibe from these players. When Tom Herman, if Tom Herman does end up losing his job, like I think he will.
No,
we're not going to feel that.
No, I think, God, that's a great point. I mean, I think, or just something mentioning that about with Charlie Strong, that you remember, I mean, that Notre Dame game in Austin, which at the time was like, was it the Tessitore call? Like, Texas is back. And like this, which has just been a meme ever since. But like, you look at the way that they reacted with Charlie after that game, players carrying him off the field, throwing him up in the air, like, because there was this genuine sense of like, the corner has been turned. And that you could see that the players genuinely cared about winning that game, not just for themselves, but for Charlie Strong. Think about some of the games that Texas has won over these past few years. You think about the Sugar Bowl, the big win over USC in Austin. Like, some of these games, like the Oklahoma game, you haven't really seen that reaction. You like the Gatorade dump, but that same kind of like elation and happiness towards the head coach that you saw specifically with that Notre Dame game for Charlie. That was like, this is for you, coach, kind of thing. And then I also think about when he left the University of Houston, the quotes and the talk that came out of there about him leaving. There was a lot of like, some of the players like, yeah, we're kind of glad he's gone, and he handled it like an asshole, lied to the team. There didn't seem to be a lot of like, oh, we're really going to miss this guy. It was like, God, this guy was a pain in the ass to play for. And that was a team that won they were winning games.
They were. Yep.
They were winning games. Like for a program like this that feels like they should be winning games, when you're getting the burnt toast and runny egg treatment and all the like gimmicky shit that he's pulled over these years, like that wears on you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's one thing when you come in like as a freshman and all this stuff, but man, when you're like a junior and it's like you're an adult. Let's be pros about this. And I just wonder how much that's worn on some of these guys. And I don't know. We can all of this is a lot of like observance. You know, this isn't
Mm-hmm.
anything from Mike might have some insight on this, but just from like directly that we've heard from or anything from any players on campus. But like, I don't think he's going to be as missed as Charlie Strong was.
No, it doesn't.
Or Mac.
Especially Mac, and you don't have to have a player in your ear. You can. It's body language. It's just
a player quitting mid-game.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, and then starting the next week.
The total lack of respect for the coach, because they don't care about him. Like if you respect somebody enough, you don't walk out on them in the moment like that. There's no respect there. These guys don't respect him. And I think that this Iowa State game, you know, these players are going to say the right things. They don't want to give the appearance. And I think Sam has probably had that conversation with them even on his way out about, guys, we have to be careful about the way that we approach this. You're representing a brand, a university. There are leaders in that locker room that want this program to get to get a great head football coach and to be successful, whether they're on their way out the door or they're just starting up in this program. So I think that we won't hear a lot of that directly from play. You know, like we won't hear a ton of that. I don't feel like we will, but I think it will get out that a couple of guys were like, yeah, let's move on. You know, like let's just get out of here and find the next guy. But I don't know, man. This is it's just so evident to me and you, obviously, that they don't care. It's a lack of caring, man.
Yeah, and I mean that leads us to kind of this next part of the discussion is, well, where does this go from here? And regardless of what happens these last couple games against K-State and KU, where does this go from here? At best, this team finishes 7-3. At worst, they finish 500. I mean, a Kansas loss would, I mean, there'd be no question about it. But like, I think let's talk about where this program goes. The latest I've seen, there was an interesting article, I think it came out last night or today, from Chip Brown, which, say whatever you want about Chip Brown. He's actually, I know he caught a lot of heat a couple seasons ago for coming out with kind of what was considered like a hit piece on Tom Herman right before the first signing day that was notable because Nick Bonito, starting linebacker for Oklahoma, was on the verge of committing to Texas right before that first signing, the early signing day. And this Chip Brown article, which talked about kind of the dysfunction with Tom Herman's program, kind of how his behavior, all these kinds of things pushed him and his family away, and he ends up committing to OU. So that was kind of notable. And people were like, God, Chip Brown shouldn't be, as a writer for Texas, he shouldn't be releasing these kinds of things. It seemed like a measured hit piece kind of thing. But in retrospect, a lot of the stuff that he's reported on has been pretty accurate. So take that all with a grain of salt before I mention any of this. About he's basically said that in the next couple days the discussions are going to be happening at UT regarding Tom Herman's future. This isn't, I don't think there's going to be anybody getting fired before the end of the season at this point. I think that we're this far into it now that there's going to be 2 more games to play for Tom Herman, but the decision may already be made by the time that a ball is kicked against K-State. That being said, apparently he also mentioned that the extension that Tom Herman received after the Sugar Bowl which we've discussed here about how kind of in retrospect, that was a pretty harmful thing for the program, given the kind of money it tax onto this buyout.
Yeah.
Basically said that was not Chris Del Conte. He disagreed with the extension at that time. He wanted to wait. He was reporting, his report says that basically that was Tom Herman's agent reaching out directly to Greg Finvis, the president of Texas at the time, for the extension. Finvis pushed it through and overrode what Chris Del Conte wanted to do, which was to wait. So there's a couple things at play here in that this is not Chris Del Conte's hire. This is a Mike Perrin and Greg Finvis hire. There's a new president of UT. Chris Del Conte's got a lot of money tied up in stadium construction, all those kinds of things. He pays attention to what's happening on the recruiting trail with Quinn Ewers and countless other players that have jumped off the ship at this point. And he wasn't the one responsible for giving him an extension. So there's no kind of obligation in a way for Chris Del Conte to feel tied to Tom Herman sticking around at Texas. And the other factor of it is, I guess, apparently Urban Meyer's contract with Fox for doing the pregame stuff and, the studio work there. I think December 19th is the last day of his contract with Fox.
Is that right?
Apparently so. Yeah, apparently so. So that's kind of the latest on this stuff. I think it sounds like that, this was really kind of like really this team not being in Big 12 contention this year, like now being removed from that and not playing in a Big 12 championship game has really kind of sealed Tom Herman's fate. I know there's going to be a lot of discussion about his buyout, how much assistants are going to need to be bought out because they just got hired for this season. But honestly, it's not my money. It's not our money. That's if they want to go. I know we talked about, it's a pandemic, all this, stuff going on, but I think that there are long-term ramifications for Chris Del Conte to not make a move here. I think the recruiting thing is one thing, but the interest in this program, the apathy is, I think we've hit on it on this show before. I've never been this apathetic about this program.
No, it was, for me, it was when we knew Mac had given up, and I felt so down about where it was at the time, and I wasn't even as apathetic then as I am now. Like I just feel like it's a letdown to. So Texas is, you don't usually like to go through head coaches at the rate that the University of Texas has gone through, and you want to see somebody, put down some roots and have some success. And when you finally feel like there's two opportunities now that Texas has gone out and made a quote unquote splash hire and got one of the bigger names, one of the bigger up and coming coaches that gets on campus. And the problem with the great up and coming coaches is they're still usually up and coming. They're not necessarily University of Texas football head coach ready. So to me, this hire, we're talking like the guy's already fired, and I don't really even care, because I think at this point, your point about Del Conte, there's too much to lose by not doing it right now, it is spot on. So to me, and I've been saying this for a while now, that it needs to be somebody that's not learning on the job. This is not an up and comer. This is somebody that's coming in and has done it before on a big stage and has shown they can win big football games. And maybe Urban Meyer doesn't work out, but because there's no, there's always been a lot of smoke around these big names, and there's never been any fire. So I just want to make the point again that the next football coach at the University of Texas has to be somebody that knows who they are as a head football coach.
Yeah, it has to work. I mean, you talk about kind of the apathy and the feeling towards Max, the end of Max tenure. I think a lot of that, there was also a lot of feeling though of like, okay, so, the program's kind of in this rut. All we need is a change. All we need is a change. This thing is, Mac had this thing going for a decade plus. Just need a change, and this thing, like, the train will just pick up steam again and keep going. Just Mac, it's gotten stale, just something fresh.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was even that kind of feeling with Charlie. It was kind of like, okay, this just isn't working out, but this is only a few years removed from a program that was playing in a national title game. This just wasn't the right fit. Get a change, and then things will be fine. We're now 4 years removed from Charlie Strong, and this program's relevance on the national scene is nothing. It's nothing. I mean, like, basically the relevance nationally for this program is whenever Texas loses a game, people on Twitter and all that stuff joke about Texas being back. We made it's a joke here.
The program is a meme in itself.
It's a meme.
Like it's what it's become, and it's unacceptable to me, to be honest. And we've had the blue blood conversations, and should we even, why do we even feel this way because there's a lot of ways to go into this, but for me, I just want a football coach that comes in here and knows what he's doing. Period. Yeah, that has an identity. We know, okay, if we hire this head coach, this is the identity of what this football team is going to be. Period. And the lack of that is another reason that recruits are running off and not wanting to come to Austin, is because they're seeing, every couple of years out, it was always like, oh yeah, well, Tom Herman's always had decommitments as these processes have gone on, because the more they pay attention to the program, because, oh, Texas wants me, I'm gonna watch this, I'm gonna pay attention even more now. They can see it. These football players, even in high school, are smarter and smarter. They understand more and more scheme. They're running more and more complicated things at the high school level, and it translates. They can see what's not successful at the college level, and they can see that nothing at this football program is consistent under Tom Herman. They don't want to come here and play for that guy. So if you know who you're bringing in, and they know who they're going to get to play for, they know what kind of program that's going to be run, it just makes it so much easier to get those guys to convince them, to a Quinn Ewers, to stick around, because you know what you're going to get.
I completely agree. I think the identity aspect is huge, but I think with this hire, it's got to be more than that. I think to have an identity is great. I mean, it's necessary. It's absolutely necessary. This hire has to really generate buzz. This really has to be something that, and that's where I think we've talked about this before with like the Urban Meyer hire checks all of, like, that Urban Meyer would check all of those boxes. He knows who he is as a coach. You know what kind of system he's going to run. And immediately, day one, the night that hire, if it's announced, every recruit that he's ever reached out to in the last couple of years is going to be interested in coming to Texas, including Quinn Ewers, who his first offer was from Urban Meyer. It's got to be something, because there's plenty there. This isn't, we're not sitting here talking about like Urban Meyer's the only good football coach out there. He's not. But there's, we can talk about some really good coaches around the country. I've heard the name like Brian Harsin thrown around a little bit. He's a guy that has some history with Texas. He was here on Mac Brown's staff as a co-offensive coordinator, whatever it was, during kind of a dysfunctional time, and goes on, and he's had success at Boise. He's a really good football coach, with an identity and those things. But does the Brian Harsin hire register with players in Texas, register with the top tier recruits? I don't know if it does. And in that sense, can he build a program? I'm pretty sure he could. But does this athletic department and this fan base have 3 or 4 years of 2 and 3 star recruits to build that program? Do they have the patience to do that? I don't think the fan base does, to be honest. And I mean, that's including myself in this. This is, we're talking about a program that since 96 has only won 2 Big 12 championships. This, I think the only thing that's going to get fans excited, that's going to get the recruits excited, it has to be something of the magnitude of Urban Meyer. It's the only thing at this point that can really overnight change that perception and put Texas back into the national conversation, which is mandatory if you want to get these nationally ranked recruits.
If you look at it from that perspective of it, you want the instant change, then yeah, I mean, it's Urban Meyer. I don't want to put all of my eggs in that basket, and in terms of
For sure.
my expectations, what we would obviously love, that's the dream scenario, right? You get Urban to come in and sell your soul for the, and
Hey,
you bring in
basically,
Urban, I mean, and because you want to win, right? And that is the kind of move that a Chris Del Conte will make, because again, he wants to make the big move and then let that be successful, so he doesn't have to answer for anything. He knows that that's the quickest way to get from point A to point B is Urban Meyer. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's been plenty of phone conversations there, and I just think that Del Conte is a good enough businessman. He's a good enough businessman. He's a good enough fundraiser. He's a good enough decision maker to understand that he can't necessarily afford another 3 or 4 years,
right.
to hire a Brian Harsin.
From everything Chris Del Conte has said during his time at Texas, he is not interested in program building,
Right.
for any of the sports, not just football.
That's why you see the women's basketball hire,
the softball hire, every hire
Yeah.
that he's made at Texas, he's gone out after the top coaches in that sport.
Mhm.
And that is his expectation. He said as much whenever he took over at Texas. Every single program at this university should be top 10 level, competing for national championships. We have too many resources, too many built-in advantages, all those kinds of things to be talking about building programs. And the selling your soul part with Urban Meyer, I'm completely on board with that. And any fan out there that says, you know what, I don't like this. This is not my bit. I'm not a fan of this. I don't like it. I get that.
Mhm.
I completely get that. My only counterpoint to that is name another coach, not name Nick Saban, not name Dabo Swinney, not name Brian Kelly, who I wonder if what might be, I've heard rumblings about him maybe being someone that gets reached out to. But some of these names that are constantly in the playoff conversation, name another coach that's actually realistic that Texas can go and get this month. And I don't think there are any. I just don't. That's actually realistic that this team,
No,
that this
yeah.
school can go and get. And so yeah, I mean, there's definitely a conflict there in terms of like, Urban Meyer's integrity and all those kinds of things. I mean, on one hand, you can say, well, we're not talking about Art Briles, but like, but and that, like I said, I do completely understand any fan that's like, look, this is, okay, they're going to win some games, but God, I'm just going to have to hold my nose during all this. And I get that. I completely understand that. I just don't know what Texas, what other options are really for Texas at this point. What Chris Del Conte can actually do. I know we've thrown around some names, before, like outside of here. I think Mario Cristobal is another name that's been floated around a little bit. I mean, do you see Oregon letting him go financially? I
Well,
mean, do you see
they
him letting him?
they just gave him an extension, a raise, I think, and I know, and maybe he's not paid very well there. That this is going to be, I think he's going to come out of this with a big raise, because he's gonna, even if he's not thinking about coming to Texas, that's a bargaining chip for him, because
Right.
he's drastically underpaid. But no, I don't think they would let him get off campus.
Yeah, I don't
There's
think
enough
Phil
money there
Knight
to keep
Nike's
him.
going to let Mario
Yeah,
Cristobal get
bingo,
out of there. Yeah. I
bingo. I
mean,
think there's enough money to keep him around.
I've got his record right here. I mean, he's 24-8 currently, head coach at Oregon, 9-4 for his full seasons. I know he coached one bowl game whenever Taggart left, but like he's 9-4, 12-2, and then 3-1 so far this season. That was a pretty ugly loss for them last night at Oregon State. But 24-8 so far. He was an ace recruiter at Alabama. He was named National Recruiter of the Year for a few seasons. Yeah, each of his 4 seasons at Alabama, he was ranked by 24/7 Sports as the #1 recruiter in the country. He's a Miami Hurricane guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's he's been around guys like Jimmy Johnson and Nick Saban. He's a guy, so he's familiar with recruiting in the South. I'm curious, what he might feel his ceiling is at Oregon. But again, so even that, I think Mario Cristobal is a good coach. I think Oregon's got a good coach on their hands, and they're going to do everything they can to keep him around. But is he a sure thing? And that's kind of,
Right.
and I know Urban Meyer, you can still say, well, maybe he's not a sure thing. Maybe it doesn't work out at Texas. But there's no, Mario Cristobal hasn't won that many games. I mean, he hasn't been a head coach that long. I mean, he was at Florida International and had he finished 20 games under 500 there. 27-47 was his record from 07 to 2012. Won one bowl game, the Little Caesars Bowl, on a 7-6 season.
Are they bringing that bowl game to Texas too, just like the New Mexico Bowl and every other football team and basketball? Anyway, that's
That's a
might be
different
another
show.
conversation.
That'll be on our bowl preview special. But some of these other names, like Kyle Whittingham, the Utah head coach, who I think is a really good coach, but he's also a Utah guy. Like, there's no pulling him away from the Utes. And, I don't see him going anywhere. Bronco Mendenhall is another name that I've seen tossed around a little bit. He's 29-31 at Virginia. I know Virginia is that's a tough place to win, especially with kind of the quality that, you got to deal with Clemson, and now you got to deal with North Carolina in that conference, Notre Dame.
Yeah, but he's shown good things there. And Mike and we were having a conversation with Mike about who our short list would be. And Mendenhall is one of those guys that I wouldn't mind them giving a call. He has a couple of years left on his contract at Virginia. They extended him a couple of years ago, I think, but he is one of those guys that I wouldn't mind, at least in the conversation, in terms of knowing who he is as the head coach, being a name that would resonate within football circles, at least. It may not be the splash like for Joe Fan, for general fan, but
Jesus, I'm throwing stuff around in here. I start hearing general fan, I just lose it.
But in football circles, Bronco Mendenhall would move the needle for sure. But I don't know, man. Are there any other names that pop out to you?
I think honestly, I think after Urban Meyer, the only one that I've really heard is like a realistic discussion is Cristobal. I think what he would bring, and I know then everybody's going, well, he's a dirty recruiter and all those. He's supposedly one of the, dirtiest recruiters in the country. Well, good. The NCAA, like, who gives a shit anymore? Nobody cares. You got to recruit, and that's, so we're just going to continue letting guys like the Brockermeyers go to Alabama, and like, what's the kid, Jalen Waddle, the receiver from
Right.
Houston, to go to Alabama. We're just going to, like, come on.
Yep.
You're going to let everybody from continue to go to Ohio State and Alabama, and like, let's call it what it is. If you want to be at this national, like Clemson with their whole like church money funneling thing that they've got going on, like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, let's call it what it is. If you want to compete at the highest level in what we consider amateur athletics and college football, this is the game that has to be played.
Mhm.
And if Oregon had an issue with that, they wouldn't have made him their permanent head coach. I think his pedigree, I even read that he went through I had this pulled up reading about him. Like, he went through a 2-year application process to become a U.S. Secret Service agent and was offered the job. And when he was a graduate assistant at Miami, and he accepted the job, but then the next day he changed his mind and told the team that he was sticking around and sticking with coaching. And, he was a good offensive lineman. Like, I think his pedigree would be something I go, you know what, I can get excited about this. He's made all the stops. University of Miami, Alabama, Oregon. He's been around the big programs. I know the Florida International thing didn't quite, 20 games under 500 didn't quite work out.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, he has his flaws. I mean, we see what Justin Herbert's doing now in the NFL, and it's like, you didn't win more games with that guy.
No kidding, man.
So
and I was so down on Herbert coming out.
I think we both had that discussion. We're like, is this guy as good as people think?
Yeah,
and then
he gets out from underneath that, and that maybe gives you a pause there, but it's still, like, it's just a matter of, if it's not Urban Meyer, who's the next best guy?
Right.
You have to. There has to be this program has to have a short list. And it has to be big name. And if you don't get this guy, then you're all in on this guy. And I don't care if it's your third choice. You have to know who you're going after, and you have to make it happen, because your first choice doesn't exactly, it doesn't always work out. We've been through some coaching hires lately where we hear these names and we're like, oh man, this big name's coming. We're Texas, they're coming here, and it doesn't always work out that way. So there's obviously been, the last 2 hires have been failures. They have been not, were they at the right time? Did they seem like okay hires? Yeah, I remember being excited for Charlie Strong, but it just hasn't worked. You have to, the hire has to be better this time. And I think that with some leadership, with the new president at the university, with Chris Del Conte knowing, I think he's better at that. And we've had this discussion. He's better at that side of things than he is at being out and, out and about. And I don't want him necessarily giving quotes. I want him behind the scenes doing what he does best. And I think that as a businessman doing what's best for business, Del Conte will make the right hire here.
Yeah, I think so. I think you hit on something that we've kind of talked about before, in that it's about time for Texas to start acting like Texas.
Mm-hmm.
You want to start, you're talking about weird Texas and all these kinds of things. It's time to start acting like it. And we've talked about A&M. They had their sights set on one coach, and they went and got him. They out Texased Texas in that regard. They didn't care how much money it cost. This is who we want, and this is who's going to be the head coach at Texas A&M. And they went and got him. And a lot of people are, oh, well, the money and all that kind of stuff. Who gives a shit? They're number 5 in the country.
Yep. The joke's over. Like, they've figured it out. Like, they've got their guy. And even and he didn't come in and win right away either. But
No,
it's like, but you see, when you have a guy with that sort of pedigree and that ability, he knows how to win.
a guy
And
that's won a national championship at a major
yeah,
program, like all
yeah,
those things, they identified who they wanted, who was the fit for their program, and what direction they wanted to go, and they made it happen.
yep,
And I think if
yep.
Texas took that approach with Urban Meyer, he's the next coach at the University of Texas.
Oh, I think they're already taking those steps with Urban Meyer, and and whether or not he decides that it's a move that he wants to make is up in the air to me. But
Well,
I
I'll
feel
add
like
this real
that's already
quick.
been
I'll add
happening.
this
Yeah,
real quick. In that Chip Brown report, apparently people around Urban Meyer, Fox, the whole thing has now said that he is interested in coming back to coach, and it's only Texas, Notre Dame, and USC that he'd even consider taking jobs at.
well, Notre Dame doesn't have an opening right now, and
Nope.
they looked damn good yesterday.
That's a solid. That's why when people talk about Brian Kelly, it's kind of like, I mean, for one, I think he's a perfect fit for Notre Dame. I don't see him going anywhere else, but like
Yep.
that guy's a hell of a coach. You talk about someone that was given the ultimatum like Tom Herman was, and he replaced his entire staff. He changed his philosophy. He changed like the way that he coached. He used to be this red in the face, screaming at players, didn't get along with players, and he actually took stock of what he was doing as a head coach and changed. And now look at him.
Amazing. Yeah, it's good for him because that, and he was one of those names for a while there. He's like, yeah, he's a good coach, but I don't want to go play for him in my mind,
Right.
because I see the type of coach that he was. To be able to grow like that, even after he's been doing it for as long as he has been, like, that's impressive to me. And that football program looks fantastic. They shut out North Carolina in the second half yesterday. And after that was a tie ball game at halftime. They shut North Carolina out in the second half. And North Carolina's not a bad football team either, by the way. But
No,
but
their upstart coach. I think that's also
yeah,
someone Texas should take a look at. I think
yeah,
what he's doing there at North Carolina is pretty impressive. I mean,
yeah. His wife's baking cookies. I hear it's great.
that's
They
Mac Brown's music. Oh no.
Oh my God, it's Mac Brown's music.
Scares you to death. Scares you to death.
No, but man, that's just that Notre Dame job isn't opening up. So the stars are aligning, man, for this to happen. And Tom Herman has had every opportunity to push this away, to prolong this, even if you want to put it that way. He's had every chance to establish himself, and he's pissed every chance away that he's had. And it's just not. It's over, man. Like, we agree, right? It's over.
It's over. I think it's over. I think the writing's on the wall. I think it's done. This is a team that is going to, I mean, I don't know, in likelihood, finish outside of the top 25. Everybody's going to a bowl this year, so he can't hang his hat on like, whoa, we've been to four bowls. But the facts are that he hasn't lost less than 3 games since his first season at Houston when he went 13-1. It's been 3 losses or more every year as a head coach for him. And okay, that's fine. If that's in a regular length season, you're talking about, okay, 9-3. When he was 9-4 that Sugar Bowl season, and then gets the Sugar Bowl win to get 10 wins. Like, I just don't. I think he's an okay coach, and I think it's a program like Texas and what the program's goals are, where it's alumni, where it's fans, where it's everybody that's involved and follows this program wants it to be. He's not going to get it there. 7, 8, 9 wins is kind of the ceiling with him, and that's totally, that's fine. It's somewhere else.
Yeah, not here.
But not at Texas, and that's where something's got to change. But yeah, I think it's over with. I think I think, as we've talked about before, I think the recruits are they're really the ones that have driven the kind of nail into the coffin on Tom Herman's tenure here. I think if he kept some of these guys in the fold and finished with a strong recruiting class for 21, which we talked about this with Mike, and at length, this looks like a transition recruiting class. This does
Yep.
not look like a recruiting class coming out of year 4 for a program on the rise. And that's a problem. That's a big problem. And the
Tells
22
a
class is
story.
shaping up to be even worse if Tom Herman's sticking around when you've got generational talent in that class in the state of Texas.
The long-term, I think let's put a bow on this and then talk a little Runnin' Horns.
Yep.
But your point about the what could come if you don't make this hire, the hole you'd be dig. I mean, I'm sorry, you know what I'm trying to say. What would come if you don't fire Tom Herman right now? The ramifications of that, the hole that you would dig deeper into, is not worth. The squeeze ain't worth the juice. Get rid of them now.
No, and that's why I said,
and save yourself some time.
yeah, and that's why I said earlier, like, it's not my money.
Right.
It's not my money, but my money is what I decide to do with season tickets, how I decide to spend my Saturdays, how I decide, how I support the program with my attention and with my time and my money.
Mhm.
And while I'm not contributing money directly to the buyout of Tom Herman and the hiring of a new coach, I do contribute my time and my money to tickets and attention and those kinds of things. And if there's a lot of people out there that feel the same way I do about the amount of time and attention and money that I give personally as a, small time fan going forward, if enough people feel the same way I do, that's a bigger hit on the program for the years to come than it is if they just bite the bullet and make a change.
Right, and there's different levels of that, right? But
Yeah.
like, you have season ticket holders, you have donors, which you've checked both of those boxes in the past, and it's one of those things where you can't leave this bad of a taste in this many people's mouths at the same time. And that's why you don't see Chris Del Conte tweeting positively about the Texas football team like he does all the rest of these programs.
Yeah.
After you get they win a football game, and you don't see that, just like when the tennis team does this, or the golf team does this, or the women's basketball team did this, and you see the congrats, way to go ladies, or way to go men, or whatever it is, and you don't see it. It's from Chris Del Conte when it comes to this Texas football program, and that, to me, it just really says where he is, where he wants to go, and what he's going to be doing here really soon in a few weeks, which is making a decision that we think is going to happen. He's just too smart of a businessman not to see all the things that we're seeing right now. So
yeah, I think the next few weeks are going to be really interesting. I think it's going to be a December to remember.
that's what they say. Yeah.
It's what they say. It's what the hashtag brands tell me. So
yeah.
Well, speaking of that, and just like the Lexus that you'll see in your driveway on Christmas morning, let's put a big old bow on Texas football talk.
Yeah, please.
And before I go jump out of a window, but let's hit on the basketball team real quick. They opened up the season this past week. I know we had the preview show with Mike. I don't know if there's a ton to get into. They played UT Rio Grande Valley. They look great.
Yeah.
They did what they were supposed to do, and Greg Brown is going to be a joy to watch this season. I mean, he's
enjoy him while
he's here.
Yeah, because he'll be gone. But no, man, yeah. To me, I watched it back earlier, and I have it on right now again. I just have it on loop as we're recording here, and yeah, Brown, like, he jumps off the page. He's what is advertised. Like, it's freaky almost. Like, he's going to be really fun to watch. And then I'll just touch on one other cat that I know, to me, was going to play a big part in terms of the direction of this team, and that's Matt Coleman, who played well. It's one of those things where You just want to see the good guard play, consistent guard play. Don't turn the ball over a ton. Find your guys, and Coleman can score a little bit too. We know that. So he's going to play such an important role in getting this team going. Even though Ramey had more assists than Coleman had, and Ramey really had across the board had probably had the best stat line of the night. But a lot of guys got some minutes and got on the stat sheet. And that's what you would expect against,
Yeah.
the Rio Grande, Texas Rio Grande Valley there. So yeah, man, no, it's anything stand out to you from that game?
No, I think you hit on it. This is going to be a team, as we talked about in the preview, that should be exciting to watch. This is Shaka's best team since he's been on campus. And as we've discussed, expectations should be sky high with this team.
Oh yeah.
They should be. This is not well, let's wait and see. They could be good. No, the talent's there. Heap every expectation you want upon this team. And if it doesn't work out, we'll figure that out down the road. But enjoy Greg Brown while he's on campus, because I think he's really special. I think it's gonna be fun. I think that most importantly, it's gonna be a fun team to watch. I mean, they're not gonna win every game, but it's gonna be a fun team to watch.
Which we haven't necessarily had this sort of excitement, and Mike touched on a lot of this in the preview show with as many. You're returning 100% of your scoring.
Yeah.
From last year. Yeah. Nobody left. Nobody's in the transfer, and that speaks to where this program is in terms of these guys love Shaka Smart. You don't necessarily get that feeling in the football program that these guys. Yeah, I mean,
there's reason for excitement.
There's reason for excitement, and I just watched Greg Brown baptize somebody. While we're on just come back from the second half, and he dribbles around him with his left hand and elevates, and that's disgusting.
That's perfect.
That's the type of thing, though, is we're excited because these guys are all back. They're going to be fun to watch. And when you have a super talented guy like that and some really good players around him that know who the man is, know what their roles are, it's going to be fun, man. I think this is going to be it's going to be a really fun team to watch.
I agree. What is it? Davidson on Monday, I think. Was it
Davidson on the 30th, and then you got Villanova coming to town on the 6th.
That'll be a good one.
Which will be a great one to watch. I'm excited about, that's these early season tests, you never really know how they're going to go. That's why you see some of these these early season tournaments, and you see some upsets, who lost did Virginia lose
to San Francisco?
San Francisco. Yeah.
Saw that last night. I was watching that Oregon State game, and I saw that score come across the bottom. I'm like, what, they play the Warriors?
Yeah, exactly. Did Wilt Chamberlain come back and never he went to school? So, but I mean, that's an ESPN game against Villanova, and that's going to be exciting. It's a Sunday noon tip on ESPN. That's going to be a good one. So let's see if we could get another effort like that against Davidson, and then go into that Villanova game. Really anxious to see. It's Shaka's first test this year with this team. I think it's going to be a good one.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm excited to watch. And see, that's the difference. Now I give Mike a lot of credit on this for the hype game here, but it's turned into appointment viewing.
Yep.
I'm going to tune into the games now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where with football,
it's this one live, but I recorded it, and I made sure to watch back, because I'm interested. I am bought into what this team is doing at this point. Whereas, like you said, with the football program, it's we're watching the games. Obviously, we're watching them, we're talking about them, but it's
but if I got something else going on,
it's we know what's going to happen. It's
which isn't a lot during COVID, but
No, but the thing is what the ceiling is with that football program. There's some unknown about this football.
Yep.
About this basketball program right now. There's some intrigue. There's this.
Yes.
What is going to happen?
Yep.
And the ceiling is super high for this team. So anxious to see how this season starts to unfold for them.
Well, yeah, that's going to be a good one. We got a good week of basketball coming up. yeah, by the next time we record, we should. Well, I guess we'll have the Davidson game, but still, we can get into a little more of the Villanova stuff next week. But and we'll have a Kansas State game to discuss. So
Great.
yeah, great. Bring it on.
Can't wait.
Well, let's hit the breakfast wrap here. I just wanted to I wanted to hit on some news this week. Diego Maradona. We like to talk a little bit of soccer here. We're going to be talking more of it as we get closer to the Austin FC season, as more of those things, signings and whatnot, start to come in. And obviously we'll talk a little Arsenal here whenever the opportunity presents, but they're kind of feeling like the Texas football program right about now. So it's not as fun to break down and discuss Arsenal as it has in the past. But yeah, Diego Maradona, one of the titans of the game, really of any sport. I mean, one of the biggest stars in world sport. He's up there with Pele when the discussions about the greatest ever come up. I wanted to share a video here real quick. It's the goal of the century, Maradona against England in the '86 World Cup, and just I made sure to find the one that had the subtitles. This is the Spanish call, but it has the translation on it as well. And let me just make sure. Let me go ahead and share this here. And there we go. Make sure I got the sound on for this, because this is just a tremendous call.
This is so good.
All right, enjoy.
Ahí lo tiene Maradona, lo marcan dos, pisa la pelota Maradona, arranca por la derecha el genio del fútbol mundial, y es el tercero a tocar para Borruchaga siempre Maradona, genio, ta, ¡gol!
What planet did you come from?
Para que el país se opulle apretado, gritando por Argentina. Argentina 2, Inglaterra 0. Diego Armando Maradona. Gracias Dios por el fútbol, por Maradona, por esas lágrimas, por Argentina 2.
That's a hell of a call.
That's a call fitting of that goal. That was, I mean, a worthy call for that goal, and I'm glad that there's something like that tied to that. That's why good announcers make
like the Gus Johnson of his time.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Except with Gus, you wouldn't really be able to do as many subtitles, because with Gus, you just like whatever like chicken noise he's making,
yeah,
like high pitched squeal that he decides to make or whatever. It's just Gus. It would just be a bunch of letters on the key. Nobody would know. Intense screaming, high pitched screaming in quotation marks or whatever, maybe something.
Yeah, that's I think Gus, I think at the height of his hype, I think, what was it, Fox got him to do some of the soccer stuff, like on FS1 or something like that, and like he's doing some of the Champions League or something like that. It just didn't quite translate the same. His announcing style didn't quite translate the same way. So
I mean, he tried, like he gave it his all, and you could tell he was learning on the fly. But that's square peg round hole, man.
Yeah,
like, that ain't. But he, that's Maradona. That's a big loss. And obviously, like you said, known as one of the greatest to ever do it, if up there in the conversation as one of the greatest ever. So that really putting his country on his back in that World Cup and bringing that home was a big deal. But he was more than that. He was just a great football player, a great personality. He was eclectic. I don't know how eclectic. He was out there, man. He was on his own planet, So when that guy asked, "What planet are you from?" It literally, the dude's from another planet.
Yeah, and I think that's what made him so fascinating was it's the tortured hero type thing. It's
Mhm.
the contradictions of the life that he kind of lived, and he was a guy that like stood up for the poor and fought these battles for the working class and all these kinds of things, but then on the other side of it lived this kind of like excessive life. And I mean, the guy did a line of blow on the pitch one time. His fan ran out and had a little for him and just did it right there on the field. It's he just, and that's what he was, just this. I think the hand of God thing just summed it up so well. In that same match against England in the World Cup, which people in England still just despise the guy to this day because of that. But like, the ball was crossed in and he went up and used his hand to basically put the goal away. And they asked him after the game, and it was, Diego, how did you score that? He's like, well, it was a little bit of the hand of Maradona and a little bit of the hand of God. I mean, the guy, I mean, yeah, there's so many documentaries that have been made about the guy, and
What a
just
quote.
he's just one of those really polarizing, fascinating, like, there was the ESPN with the whole, they did the series on Michael Jordan, the whole thing, like Maradona's would be something like just the stories about it, but it would have to be like on HBO. Like
Oh yeah.
like, or something, it would
Oh,
have to be
yeah.
like after 11 p.m. for Maradona, just because the guy was just, I mean, just one of those characters that, but anyway, it was, 2020, of course. So,
No kidding, man.
well, Jay, I think we've hit on just about everything this week. We didn't
Yeah,
even
no
get to the
kidding.
Texans or the
Oh,
Cowboys
no.
or any other sports news around, but they both suck. So who
Yeah.
cares?
Oh well. Oh well.
Texans look better though. They're
Well, just
it was
Deshaun
the
Watson
Lions, but
Deshaun Watson is. Well, are they 4-3 since they fired O'Brien? It's four.
yeah, I think it's 4-3.
3-3.
I think I
How
mean
many
I'm
wins do
pretty
they
sure they
have
have a
now?
winning
3?
record.
Are they
He was
3-3?
fired after
The fourth game, right? Either way, they've won some games. He looks like Watson's Watson. They just got to figure out a way to get, and that's a whole other show about how to turn that program around. But yeah, man, it'll be interesting to see how these Longhorn football players respond. I think they'll win convincingly because I think they want to win for themselves more than they want to win for their coach at this point, which is okay. I'm okay with that. So we'll see how it goes, man. But let's get another week under our belts. Let's meet back up next week. Maybe we'll effort to have Mike on if he's free, and maybe even get some Finley picks. Who knows next time around?
Yeah, we know the fans love that.
Yeah,
That's what's driving views, and so
whatever, man.
we know where our bread's buttered at. We're not gonna, we're not naive.
No, we get it.
Yeah,
get it.
I mean, of course. So,
We know who
we're
the star
working on
is.
angling more of those, those tune in factors, and we'll see. It
Yeah.
might just become like a variety show. Like whoever we'll have a little bit for everybody.
Why not?
So,
Mix it all in. We hit every demo. Why not? Let's do it.
of course. Well,
Let's do it.
I hope everybody, probably speak for Jay here as well. I hope everybody that watches had a great Thanksgiving, or if you celebrate it where you're at, and we have some viewers overseas. So let's we're thankful for y'all tuning in, and glad that we're able to do this. And it's been a good ride here, 31 shows in, and thanks for watching, everybody. We really do appreciate it. We love doing it. So
Yeah, we sure do. Thanks for watching, guys. Y'all have a good week, and we'll see you next time. Peace.
thanks, everybody. We'll see you.
ATX representing. Fatal, baby.
All in 06 on a Saturday. Can the drip and swing down?